Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please drop us up, drop a like, and let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Also, please consider supporting our podcast via the link below. It really helps us out. Welcome, Manny, back to the World XP podcast. Last time we saw you, you were about to have your title fight. You won that, and now you're back. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely a fun night. It was a quick night, too. Feel very blessed and very hydrated now.
Yeah, of course. Alex sent me all the pictures and stuff. And what was really wild, the first thing that I thought of that I wanted to ask you the first time, but I didn't want to get in your head, but like, I was like, when you're fighting, do you ever worry like if you get hit hard enough that you can't like do life anymore? You know what I mean? Like, because I would think about that and I'd be like, ooh, I don't know if I'd want to like hop in there. So props to you first of all, but also you're kind of nuts. So
yeah, I do think about those kind of things when I fight. And fear can change the way that you execute. So one of the things I like to do is I like to study a lot of books from various warriors and generals. And one thing that Miyamoto Musashi said is fight like you're already dead. In other words, fight without fear. If things happen, they happen. I can't necessarily focus too much on the future, and I can't dwell on the past. I have to be as present as possible. And if I get hit hard and I feel it, that means I'm conscious. If I don't know what happened, I'm on the ground, I probably didn't feel it, and I'm just waking up on the ground, So with that being said, yeah, you do think about those things. I would say the hardest part of the fight isn't even the fight. The hardest part is, this might sound crazy, but fighting my sanity. Because like you, as a human being, every fiber of your existence is like, why would you walk into that cage and lock yourself in there with another man when we don't have to? Like there's no resources from this. So you have to kind of tell that side of you to be quiet and go in there and go out there and fight. So, yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I feel like it would be harder to convince myself to do it than to actually like physically physically perform whatever move you're doing. Like, because I'm in good shape physically. So like I see a move executed and I'm like, okay, like I see how he did that or whoever did that. And then I'm like, yeah, but I wouldn't go in there. Like, so that's always been interesting to me because I don't know. The first time we talked, so I listen to Rogan occasionally, and he often talks about MMA and different things, and I always wonder like the psyche of the warrior or the fighter because, and we've heard a lot about this in society recently. You hear terms like toxic masculinity, which is like whatever. Like we don't got to get into all that, but like you hear these things, and then you hear these other phrases synonymous with like being a warrior. Like you hear the phrase better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, and like all these sorts of things. And so like you actually do it. And so I wanted to talk to you about like, is it a conscious thing for you, or do you just have that like in you that you can just go ahead and like you're like it's there, but like it's very easy for you to push it out? Or like how does that work for you? And like you say you study like books from warriors and generals and stuff, like how does that all fit in?
How it all fits in is when like a fighter first starts out, there's a lot of emotions you have to deal with, especially when you're in the back. You see a lot of things. You see people come back crying. Sometimes they don't come back at all. Sometimes they're pushed off in like an ambulance. So with that being said, there's a lot of emotions that go into a fight. And when I look at these books, when it comes to martial artists, primarily ones from like, Eastern nations, Asia, is the precision of those fighters when they are out there and they do their techniques. Is there a sense of fear there? Absolutely. But that just means I care. That's how I feel deep down when it comes to that. And over time, you just realize when you're living in your purpose. Like the thing about martial arts is I feel like when I do it, I'm living in my most natural form. Nobody can take my martial arts from me. It doesn't matter. They can take everything I have, my house, my jewelry, my clothes, everything, but I still have my art with me. And everybody has their own version of art. You have your version of art with the podcast and probably many other things. And this is my version of art. So when I'm out there, I'm just expressing my art. And the wildest part about it is you never feel alone because your corners care about you and they invest in you and you trust them. And it's kind of an out-of-body experience. But things can go south, and understanding that is part of the art of war, and making sure that you prepare properly for those bad situations. And when in a fight camp, I'm putting nothing but bad situations. Like right now, I'm training and getting better, but during fight camp, every day is a struggle because they're literally putting you in situations where they know you're not good in to make sure you can get out of them, or to your opponent's strengths if they study them. Now, when they say that, that toxic masculinity side of things, I was always taught by my mother, you know what I mean, to be able to protect the people around me. It doesn't matter who they are. And that a harmless man is a liability and a dangerous man is an asset. I learned that from my mom, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very true, like the main thing that my mom wanted me to make sure that I could do is make sure people around me feel safe. The same thing with my father. So for the people who don't necessarily understand it, it's not their art, it's not their craft. Like I don't understand, makeup artists, but at the end of the day, that's their art, that's their craft, and I respect it. So
Let me try to narrow it down a bit more. Like, you were in the Marine Corps, do I remember that correctly?
I was in the Navy.
Navy. So, like when I prepare for a soccer game, especially a big game, the fear is still there. But then you still have to trust yourself that you've prepared in such a way that you've studied your opponent's strengths and weaknesses and you've developed counters for that. Um, and from that perspective, preparing for a fight is similar in a purely tactical sense. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, or what I'm trying to figure out is, and I don't want to. It's not necessarily the fear part, because you answered that, but it's the when I step in past that white line and I'm in the field, there's still pressure on me. There's still, like, for example, for Fredericksburg Fire, our season opener is Saturday, and we're playing away. The Baltimore's got their new stadium, right? It's going to be a big game. There's going to be people there, and there's going to be some sort of fear or pressure. But I'm not that pressure. I welcome it, but I don't understand maybe like the warrior mindset for me like takes it a step further, and I don't think I fully understand because I haven't done it. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to like poke at, or like trying to narrow down into, because from a like if you take it step by step, right, the preparation, it's like, okay, opponent has strength 1, okay, how do we counter this? Opponent has weakness number 1, how do we exploit that, et cetera, et cetera. And you go like step by step that way, it's the same. But when you step into your art, or for me, across that white line, they are no longer the same. And there's something about that like you can equate competition all to the same, but then there's fighting, which is like a step like past it almost. And that's that psyche part, right? So you were in the military and now you're fighting, like that part of you is like ingrained in a way that it's not in others. And that's intriguing to me because people like you aren't just like walking around all the time. Like, you know what I mean? So that's, I guess, does that make sense kind of? So I'm trying to get into like, I don't know how you think about things generally.
So the main thing on my mind at that time is execute. The training's already done. Like one thing that I learned in the Navy is that we have an execution phase. Like everything else that we've done before that, the training and all that, when it's go time, it's go time. You already know what you need to do. And you train to the point where it's so instinctual. There's nothing on my mind but to execute, but to finish. And that's where that warrior mindset, I think, kind of comes into play a little bit more from, battle, is because now I'm thinking to finish. I'm not necessarily thinking of like, this game's going to be this long. I'm thinking when I'm in there to have my proper techniques in line to finish this person from an instinctual standpoint of execution.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe it's not as far away as like I feel like it is, because it's much the same for me. As soon as I step between those white lines, it's like the game is the game, and I'm going to crush whoever I'm playing against. Like that's what the mindset has to be. it's interesting for me and kind of broader sort of culture that we've got
Mm-hmm.
this like the kids I coach, some of them have it, but not a lot do compared to like I remember growing up like my friends it could be like ping pong, it could be board games, it could be like they were going to win and obviously there's not really a training aspect with board games, but like that mindset of like that competition and like wanting to win and that fighting sort of like it's almost indescribable for like for people that don't enter into competition against other people in an uncontrolled environment.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the gym, you're competing against yourself, but it's a controlled environment.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know where it is, and it's just like it. I just feel I don't. For me. It's something that has always intrigued me since I started to like really think about these things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just to emphasize on that warrior mindset standpoint, like before I got into martial arts, I played around sports a little bit. So like when I would fight, I would usually just go the distance, which means I would go the whole fight without finishing the person. Once I started learning about these warriors and how they do things, that's when I started getting finishes in fights. That's when I started just
Mm,
ending things because like that's how they think. It's not necessarily a concept of we're going to drag this battle on as long as we can, unless it's part of their tactics. But the warriors that I've studied, they're trying to get in and get out, but still focused on being present. But they're trying to get in there, get them down with a couple techniques. It's over. Like that's
yeah,
the true like core of martial arts. And I think that's where there's a little bit of a separation between sports and fighting. Is that with that fighting aspect, we can have an early night, but if we just go in there, we execute the proper way. Whereas I think I'm not sure every other game, but a lot of the games go the distance. Like you play the whole game. If you're winning, you play the whole game. Fighting,
yeah,
you could just end them in like 2 minutes and 25 seconds, like I did, and be out without a scratch, depending on how you express your art that day.
yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, and the greatest athletes have that. They want to beat you like before halftime, or they want to beat you like they want the game to be so far out of hand that there's no like they want to kill you before like the game even goes. Like you saw Jordan and Kobe and all these guys like have that. Um, which is another thing that I find interesting because you see these guys in sports who you can tell are like built different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's interesting to me. So what have you been reading or studying or like what sorts of like what are the people or notable figures that you've read up on?
Oh man! So the first person is Miyamoto Musashi,
Hmm.
Book of Five Rings. It really kind of just breaks down how to fight and a feeling of like how you should feel when you fight, certain techniques that you should utilize. So that's one of them. Sun Tzu Art of War, because the
Mm,
fight starts way
classic.
before. Yeah, exactly. Because the fight starts way before you hop into the octagon or ring. It starts as soon as that contract's signed. Even before that, like if I have an idea of who I'm fighting, like I'm already looking at their stuff. My coach is already looking at their stuff. We're comparing this person to UFC fighters and things like that, and we're preparing for that person to be doing the same exact thing. So by the time it's time to fight, I've already won before the fight even starts in a majority of these situations because all I have to do is get to resort to their instincts and their tendencies that I've seen within the previous footage. And I have a good way of doing that. Aside from that, you got Yamamoto. He also like taught me like the benefits of like reach and things along those lines. And then also there's a book called Shinoki, and it was a samurai who turned into a ninja. And he kind of gives a manual on how to turn into a ninja. Now in modern times that may not seem too big of a deal, but it's the secrecy that he had with his art that was very cool. A lot of people nowadays will just post everything online, like every single time they spar, like all the highlights from their fight. I'm like, I got everything I need on you by just looking at your page. Like I can see what you're training with to prepare for me, all this stuff. And people have that mindset of like, oh, well, doesn't mean that they can stop it. But when you look at like the core of martial arts, there's a reason aside from, the oxygen deprivation that like karate masters train in the mountains. It's the secrecy. Like one of the things that I like to do when I fight, based off of what I've learned from these books, is do something. They're like, WTF was that? Like, what was that? Whoa, now he's confused
Mm,
because
hmm.
I don't expose my art. I don't even like cross training like that because of just what I've learned from these books to really value your art. Not everybody should be exposed to your art until it's time for it to really be out there. you'd be surprised how many people will act like your friend in fighting, and then they have a homie who they're closer with who's the same weight class who has exactly what you want. Then all of a sudden we have an opponent for you, and it's the dude you thought was your boy. You thought that you train over there having fun, and then seeing that other guy there and you sparring a couple times. It's a good thing. His coaches were in the back. They were watching everything. They were planning to fight you from the get go. So that secrecy element is like one of the main things that I love. That I learned from that book, Shinoki. It's a real good one.
Mm. That makes sense that people would do that, but it's also, well, I guess in the yeah, because I was gonna say for amateurs, like the gyms are a lot more open and people can kind of just go in and like nobody's doing that to Khabib or anything like that. Like that, like his gym is closed off to everybody. Um, that's interesting. The Art of War is the one that I'm most familiar with out of the one. I mean, I know who all of them are, but that's the one I'm most familiar with. But there's tons of lessons that people can just take away from with that from life generally as well. Have you implemented sort of um these sorts of things into your like daily life as a not necessarily from a martial arts perspective, but from a cultural perspective?
Definitely. Mainly from the concept of discipline and consistency. One of the things that Miyamoto Musashi once said was that everything is hard when you first started, and everything he said you must practice this. You'll be motivated for a little bit of time, but when you actually are consistent and you're disciplined, that's when you have like true freedom to do what you want to do. So I put that discipline into my life to make sure that everything is structured for me to grow. You know.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, it's a really interesting world to me. Just to see it as an observer from the outside and to try to take away a lot of because there's so much about the practices that just paying attention, right? That you talk about the discipline and consistency that can be applied to almost anything. And if you pay attention enough, or I try to pay attention enough, um, and try to take some of like there's stuff to take away from most things. Like a friend of mine said it's like the grocery store method. It's like you take what you want and you like leave what you don't want. Um and that's super interesting to me because like growing up there's always like Avatar: The Last Airbender and all these shows that kind of are set in Eastern culture, and so those sorts of things were like it's like, yeah, that would be cool, but also I don't want to fight people. But like I'll try and be but like I'll try and be more like mindful of things, or like I'll try and be more I don't know, it's the exposure to other cultures as well is like is a really cool thing that I think I'm sure you've experienced that even just being in the Navy, but come like reading on all these people and cultures and how they were brought up and taking right, you cross train or like you train different disciplines, so you've got different people from different cultures that you would draw on. And that to me is just a very interesting sort of concept that we have in this modern world now where I can just send a tweet and somebody in China can see, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, martial arts has a lot of those things. It ultimately comes down, in my opinion, to being just present in a situation. Like I'm pretty sure you as an athlete, there's been things that you have done that felt like so poetic. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they're able to just write down that feeling is a phenomenal thing. And I've actually like started to do that myself. Like after my last fight, I really kind of got into deep thought and like had to express like the feeling, you know what I mean? I can't remember it like quote for quote, but it just was something along the lines of like, a lot of people won't believe in you, and it's not even their fault. Like they've heard so many people say they're going to do things, and those individuals never did them. And so watch that person, believe you until they start to see the way that you perform and how you handle business. And then you do it. You're like one of the few people who say you're going to do something and you actually do it. Then all of a sudden, you make it look easy, or, you make it look cool. And now you're like hope and inspiration, for those people. So nowadays, when it comes to just, people not believing in what I do or what I say or my expectations for myself, I mean, I get why, from the way that the world is, they've obviously been hurt in some way, shape, or form where they can't believe in somebody going out there and doing something great.
Yeah. That's a weird one too. Because
Mhm.
then because you as the individual that has to believe in yourself, like if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to believe in you anyways, because you're the person that's supposed to be doing that the most. But
Mhm.
then once you cross that threshold and you're like, yes, I can do this thing,
Mhm.
and then you have to not worry about what everybody else is like thinking about that situation
Mhm.
and to put it out of your so for example, for me with soccer, I
Mhm.
didn't play in college because of various reasons.
Mhm.
And I just kept playing. Like if you had asked people that I played with in high school if I would have ended up in Mexico or on trial with Loudoun United or playing professional arena soccer right now, I
Mhm.
don't think any of them would have said yes.
Mhm.
Maybe maybe there's one. Shout out Junior. But
Mhm.
um but like I didn't care about what these people were doing and I just like kept training and kept doing and like I got lucky and that happens. And then it's weird because people then reach back out to you and they're like, "Oh, you're doing this cool thing." And you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's correct, man." Like, so have you had I assume you've had to deal with that as well. And how have you dealt with that? Like, I guess without without saying it depends on the person and the situation, but like
Yeah.
generally speaking, if something like that happens, like where's your from a if you take a step back from like a
Mhm.
it's that guy that did it instead of
Yeah.
that, but just like
Mhm.
how would you like if you had advice for the you that hadn't experienced it yet, like what would the advice be?
That's a good question. Um, so I have dealt with it before.
Yeah.
And like you just gotta, just take it in stride, just be like, thank you, the advice I would give to myself is like you wanted this, you expected this all just comes with the process. They want to be part of your story now, because now they see you going somewhere with this. Now that means people really can go out there and really turn something into reality like that, especially in something, as competitive as like soccer or something that's violent as MMA. So, just the thing that I would tell my past self is that they just want to be part of your story, man. Like, and that's okay. You don't need to have them part of your story. You could, show value within your absence without necessarily continuing the conversation. Because I have had situations that have been really weird like that. I've had people who didn't believe in me, follow me. Next thing you know, they're refollowing me, trying to like stories and things that I'm doing now all of a sudden because they want to be back in because they saw what happened. And I'm just like, yo, you gotta be kidding me, man. Like, you knew I was grinding this hard. You knew I was looking for an equation to this. A lot of people actually like left the circle. And once they did, I understood why. I didn't fight for 2 years. I mean, the pandemic and then other stuff that was going on with complications with promotions. I didn't fight in 2 years. They didn't expect me to be where I am now, at least in regards to martial arts, being number one in the state of Virginia amateur and number three from here to Mississippi to Florida. I didn't
Hmm.
expect it either. But you just gotta just realize people have different walks of life. And if you can inspire people by living your purpose, that's an amazing thing. A lot of people will go out their way to try to make people like them and things like that. But when you can accumulate individuals just from living what you want to do, it's amazing. Like the gesture that you did earlier, this one, that's exactly where you need to be.
Hmm.
Because when you're like this and you get something done, then great things happen. But the most ironic thing about it is sometimes you wish that like your phone will go back to normal. It's like, dang, I just went here, I did this. Now my phone's blowing up. People are calling me a hometown hero. I can't even go get a drink at the bar, you know what I mean, after the fight because people coming up to me wanting pictures. And you're like, dang, like 5 minutes ago, like nobody even knew. I mean, they knew who I was, but nobody really was on that wave. But then
Yeah.
now, boom, it's a very weird feeling.
Yeah, I've not had it to that perspective for sure.
Mhm.
Um, and most of the people that reach out now are, at least I think, are being like genuine, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool that you're doing that," and
Mhm.
that's fine. It has been weird to see like people come watch our practices now, and
Mhm.
people um like kids will come up to you after games. Like that to me is kind of weird because I remember being that kid, but
Mhm.
I also know like Yeah, I'm not making anything. This is like third tier. Like I'm doing this for fun, really, out of anything. Like it just happens to have this name, and like you get that perspective of like, yeah, I'm not going to play in the World Cup. Like this is not the same. But to that kid, like they have no idea.
Yeah.
Um, and so to you being like, I wouldn't necessarily call it imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
but to have the first time it happened to me, I almost like, and I was about to like brush the kid off because I was like, this is nothing, and I was
Yeah.
annoyed at something that happened in the game, and I was like, this is
Mhm.
like this league doesn't even. There's like it's fine, it's whatever,
Mhm.
and then I had to like be like, no, this kid has no idea. Like, let me make like without like tooting my own horn to be like, let me like say hi to this kid, and he'll remember that for like for a while.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing when people get super like the ones that are playing in the World Cup that have like gazillions of people that are that way. Like I often wonder
Mhm.
how they handle that because I don't think humans really are like wired to handle that much, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And then so for you and to a lesser extent myself adjusting to that, like for you to not be able to go get a drink at the bar after the fight without somebody asking for a picture, like
Mhm.
how does that fuck with your head and like
Mhm.
or does it at all because
Yeah.
you're still in like get to the next fight.
Um, it does mess with my head a little bit, not from like a negative standpoint, but sometimes you want to attach to people who you care about. And like, for example, there's so many people who supported me and genuinely love me. And it's like I can only be one place at one time. On top of the random people coming up to me, on top of me having this adrenaline, on top of having to
Yeah.
figure out what I gotta do next, on top of my coaches in the back, like, yo, Manny, like, like what's the next move? The way that I keep grounded with the situation is number one, I always tell myself, like, if I don't humble myself, like God will. So I'm gonna like be chill, be approachable, and do what I need to do. But then also just to respectfully have boundaries for the individuals who I don't know like that, because after a fight, I mean their adrenaline's pumping too, except they're already drunk. You know what I mean? So like they're coming up to you, trying to picture like, yo man. Like I remember before my last fight, like I was getting in my zone. I like to meditate a little bit before my fight, to bring out a different side of me. Like I just learned how to activate myself for a fight doing that.
Hmm.
Just like extreme presence. And so I'm ready for the fight. But I gotta go pee real quick. So I go and pee. And then I'm about to come back. I have this look on my face. I'm just ready. And my boys all drunk, like, yo, man, I said, not right now, not right now. Like my coach was in the back before I went out there. It was like, everyone outside there is your enemy. Do not talk to anybody. Because, like for coaches to get you into that zone, they really have to know you. And that's the
Hmm.
thing is like a lot of my coaches know me. Like they know how to bring out that like aggressive side of me and how to give me space to do that. They know the time for me to start warming up, etc. They know how to motivate me, how to make me like in a situation where I feel deflated, so I fight out of that like slump. So yeah, so he's like, everybody out there is your enemy. Next thing my boy's coming up to me like, yo man, like you know what I'm saying? I'm like, bro, right now I'm not even like in reality, bro. Like I'm in a whole different frame of mind. And like only thing I thought about was like execute, just walk up there, just like doing what I need to do. And I have all these people inside going, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I'm just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trying to, like you say, like, not let it mess with my head. But yeah, just
You know what's nutty about that though is like I don't know the guy that went into there because he was already drunk,
mhm.
but like in my head I'm like that's kind of a shitty friend because not like again I don't know him so like
You're good, you're good.
but like if I know that you're preparing for that fight, I
Mm-hmm.
am staying the fuck out of your way
Mm-hmm.
because it's different than like because I don't like people doing that to me before soccer. It's like okay, yeah, great, like leave me alone, and then after I'll talk to you afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But before a fight, like you got to go basically end somebody, and
Yeah.
so for some dude to be like, if you're already in that, like you're trying to be like get into that state of mind where
Mm-hmm.
it's like I'm going to crush this guy
Mm-hmm.
to have some dude come up to you or like I know he's your friend, but I was like, I feel like he should know better.
Yeah, exactly, right. But it's one of the things, man. Unless they're athletes, they
Yeah, they
have
don't. Yeah,
that
yeah.
real feeling. Because I agree with you. Like when my close friends have fights coming up, I'll say nothing to them. I'm like, hey man, you're probably getting a whole bunch of motivational speeches and all types of stuff. Like, your coaches are cool. I got
Yeah.
something for you after, man. Just know I'm gonna be there in the crowd, But yeah, so that's all. But also, a lot of people want to hang out more. But it's like, hey guys, just one doesn't mean I can really hang out. I might have a little bit more time to spend with the people who I generally, care about. Other than that, my fighting homies, I'm always gonna see all the time. When it comes to, my jujitsu people, I'll see them all the time. Shouts to IronHide and Capital. But that's when it comes down to, you have your close friends before all that, and to find that time to go hang out with them is like so important. However, you know, after the fight, people think that like, you're free, but it's like, yo, I'm not really free. Like, you know what I mean? In regards to my time, because now it's
Yeah,
a target
because
on my back.
the next one comes.
Exactly. And now
Yeah.
people really want to fight me. Before, people didn't want to fight me. Like before, it was like taking forever to get anything. Like 3 days after the fight, somebody hit me like, "Oh, we got a possible opponent for you." I'm like, "Yo, bro, like, like you know what I mean? I'm hot. I'm still like,
Yeah.
getting back
So
up.
how long does it take to recover from? Because I think what in UFC guys don't do more than two-ish, two, one or like two. I've
Mm-hmm.
has somebody done three in a year?
Yeah, some people do.
Yeah.
It all depends on the trajectory and what they want to do. Some people are very
Yeah.
strategic. Like I want to fight this guy, wait for this guy to be available, fight him. Oh, I don't want to fight this guy. Um, but from my perspective, like I want to fight as much as I possibly can. But my job wants me to do something in February, so I can't fight February. December was a little bit too soon for me, because I had some other things I need to handle, like finishing up my degree. February is a little.
Congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So yeah, so like the next one that they have open is April. So I told them, I was like, hey, April, I'm down. Like, doesn't
So is
matter.
that 6 months? 6 months
Um,
from the last one?
yeah, around that time, and it's torture. Trust me, it's torture. Like I want to like do jujitsu tournaments and all that, but I just got my purple belt in jujitsu, and my coach like, hey man, like let's just use this time to work in the lab and let's cook up new techniques. Let's actually grow, because when it comes to like getting better as a fighter, a lot of fighters they'll fight, take a break forever, and then they'll start training hard again for a fight camp. That's not how I train. Like I treat martial arts as a lifestyle, like you said, warrior, in a garden. So what I'll do instead is I'll actually like train hard year round. Like I'm already in a camp, but I just eat a lot of food, so my
Yeah.
muscles recover quickly. But when I have a fight, that's when we start to zero in on what my opponent does good, bad, etc. So it's like this is the prime time for me to grow, because I actually have all the nutrition I need and to excel. Like I want every fight to be a leap and bound from my last fight, and it appears to be going that way. So
Yeah. Well, also from the recovery question,
mm-hmm.
if you finish a guy in 2 minutes, then there's not really a recovery period in that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
But let's hypothetically speaking, let's say if I win 5 rounds and you're like, you
Mm-hmm.
got a, I don't know, minor injury here or minor injury there, what would people be looking at? Like, is that like a 6 month, 8 month type before so they can recover and then go again? Like, because I don't know. All I know is from paying very not close attention to UFC. So
Yeah,
I don't really know how it works and how the body recovers
mm-hmm.
from fighting specifically. I know for like other sports and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
fighting is a different.
Yeah, so it depends on like what happens in the ring. Also depends on the venue's fighting again. I've seen people get, nothing happened to them and they take longer to fight than somebody who got knocked out. It depends on when to come back. Usually recovery wise, the coach usually tell you it doesn't even matter if you did good and you fall, you didn't get touched, to take like a week off just to let your body like just chill for a second. Because you really just went from you did this hard fight camp, turned your body into a raisin, turned into a grape again, freaking, now you're pumped adrenaline, and you out there and fought another man. You're more exhausted. The body's a phenomenal thing, but a lot of fighters are more exhausted than they think after a fight,
Mm-hmm.
and they really need that time to rest and recover, because they just have to put their body through a lot, like physically, emotionally, and mentally.
So next fight for you is potentially would be so we talked last time for those who didn't listen, go check out the fight promo one. I think is 83.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so the structure of MMA for you would be so you've got your title belt for the weight class that escapes me for the region.
Pretty much for the region. Yeah, for the state
So
technically.
then, like, what is next for you, like going
Mhm.
up the ladder?
So I'm gonna defend the belt once. You know what I mean? I'm gonna defend it
Oh yeah,
once.
we talked about that last
Yeah,
time.
to
Yeah,
show
yeah.
that this isn't a fluke.
Hmm.
Like I worked so hard to get here, man. Like I know that might sound cliche, but man, like to do what I did, and then to take 2 years off, try my best to hop into the ring, and not getting no opponents to continuously train to be able to execute on the way that I have done. That a lot of people would have not have done that. Like, I mean, I'm 30, like, and like with that being said, like a lot of people would have tried to transition on to something else, but like when you really want something, it never leaves your mind. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I need to get this done. And so I just got to go out there again, display my art on new levels. And then from there, then I'm going pro. Then when I go pro, that's when it gets really real. Amateur is where, in my opinion, you should make your mistakes. That's where you should take your L's. That's when you should learn how you feel with this. But once it goes professional, people are fighting to eat. It's different. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we're also preparing for that curve as well. So, yeah, defend the belt, go pro after 2, 3 fights in the local scene, then boost it up. Like, I mean, people are getting UFC and PFL contracts like over 5 fights. And the PFL just started up a deal with Jake Paul today,
Mm.
to boost the promotion. And at one of the gyms I trained at, or I train at daily, this dude came up to me. He's like, "Yo, man, I see you crushing on the bike all the time, like the sprint bike." So I've been on that thing for like ever. And he was like, "Yo, I just want to let you know I see you. What do you do? Oh, you're a fighter. Oh, like one of my boys helps run the PFL." I'm like, "What? Like that's crazy." And then I have another homie who hit me up like, "Hey, man, like if you get a win streak in regards to professional, we got some people at the UFC and the Ultimate Fighter who want to have a conversation." That's why, like, it's so important to have that solid core of fights as an amateur before you go pro, because they ain't no going back
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, 100%. How different is the how this is I'm asking this question out of slight ignorance of the sport itself. How
Mm-hmm.
different is the level of fighter between not counting like the Khabibs of the world and like the top guys, but like the middle of the road pro guy and like a top level amateur. And I know that different guys are better at different disciplines and different styles and stuff, but generally speaking, like, is there a big gap there, or is it kind of like it's closer than people think?
Um, It depends. It depends on doing their amateur like scene. So I see it like this. You got like the starting out fighter who isn't that confident. Then you have the fighters who just like to fight amateur wise. You have the fighters who just like to fight, but they really haven't picked if they want to like party and do this for clout or if they really want to be serious with this. The top amateurs, to get to the top of being an amateur, you have to be serious. But then once it's pro, like the pros that I've went against, they just have so many tricks in the book. Like if they need to finish you, they have the moves already that they know. If they need to get out of the situation, they already have the moves that they just have. So yeah, like I would just say the biggest thing is like they have such good techniques. Like if you do that, I got this for it. They're way more composed, and they just have such a solid mind because of all the experience that they've had getting to that level.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like if I was like got caught in like a headlock or something or some sort of hold, I'd be like, yeah, immediately just like I'm done. But like to stay when I watch these guys fight, like the top level ones that almost like to somebody that has no clue, looks like he's done. But then you hear somebody, one of the commentators, be like, "This is where he wants him because then he can flip him or he can do this or that," and they're like, to be composed when you're like to only breathe, you have to like yank the guy's arm like down from your neck a little bit so you can like get a breath, and then you have to like it's nuts to me that they are able to like remain calm in that situation
Mm-hmm.
because you're borderline like I mean the guy can kill you. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's nuts to me. Have you I mean, obviously you've been in that situation sparring before, but in a fight, have you had to get out of? And you don't gotta spill any any details or any trade secrets,
Good.
but have you been in that? Have you been in situations like that before, where like
Mm-hmm. Only once. I was at a jiu-jitsu competition. Someone got me into a submission, like a triangle choke, and then I couldn't get out of it, but I was up on points. So I was like, "Yo, you have to put me, you have to put me to sleep, man. You have to kill me." Like I literally had my mouth like this, and I was like breathing like that. My mouth was in the way, so I'm going like this to breathe. I
You
mean,
psycho.
yeah, right. I was just, it was crazy. I got a video. I'll send you it if you want.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but like to me, man, just suffering's growth. Like anytime you've grown, you've been tested and you've suffered to get better.
Mm-hmm.
So in situations like that, it's just like, yo, like this is gonna make me a stronger person on the end of it. So stay focused, be present, control your breathing. Like this is all the stuff we read about. This is all the stuff that we train. Like he obviously doesn't have it in all the way, and he could have a submission be squeezing and panicking, but at the end of the day, like I'm in a position where I know that if it comes to breathing, you're gonna have to put me out because like I'm not. I want to win, and if I go out, oh well, I dare to be great. So
Is that a technique that you practice, like when you're in a triangle choke or something, like how to get the most air in?
no, like my coaches were not happy that that happened. So like you usually have you have an escape you're supposed to do. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
do this, do that, do this. But I just got stuck, and I was just like, yo, I can't get out. But then I was just like this, and I'm just like, yo, I'm not tapping. Like his leg was wrapping. I'm just like, bro, I'm not gonna do it. Like I'm not. Like and then they have this look like I got you, and it's like I don't care. Like I do not care. I look over and I see I'm up on points. I will lay here.
So how does the points work then? So you know you're up on points, but like if he got you in that way, like a normal, like I would be like, well, he's probably winning because he's got
Yeah,
you.
right. Um, so like I don't know, jiu-jitsu tournaments are weird. Like I don't even know if it really points like that. My coach is telling me to go do it. But like you get like a takedowns 2 points, and then you pass a certain position, like their guard, you get points. Then it depends on the tournament. Some tournaments will give you points for setting up a submission. This one didn't though. So I was just like, okay, I'm up on points. Like I'll be good. So like
Hmm.
just there's so much growth in suffering and testing yourself. I'm not saying to live suffering, but like when those tests are there and you embrace those challenges, you become such a stronger and better person. Like some people haven't been tested since college, since school, really, and
Or before that,
yeah,
honestly.
or
Some
before
people
that.
some people get to school and it's like they're still coasting. It
Mm-hmm.
I was academically like that anyways. Like I was still coasting in that way. Like I didn't have to study hardly for I didn't make the most of myself at college. But as a person, definitely trials and tests and
Yeah.
and growth as a person. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's one too because I feel like a lot of the people like that was instilled in you from your mom from when you were little. So
Yeah.
it's like when you grow up with that, it makes life easier is not the right word, but it makes it more fulfilling in the long run to have the perspective of I can tolerate this discomfort because I know on the back end
Yeah.
something good will happen from it.
Yeah.
And then to have the awareness to take the lesson out of it, to think
Yeah.
of like, okay, oh, it was uncomfortable or I suffered for this XYZ reasons and this is what I learned from it.
Yeah.
And then to go apply it again because it's easier to say like, yeah, I learned this thing and then you just never do it. Because people do that as well.
Yeah. Like it's crazy. Like my hot yoga instructor once said this. Like be comfortable being uncomfortable in
Mm-hmm.
certain situations, not everything, but that's where true change happens. It happens outside your comfort zone. So that's also something that else to help that a lot. It was like the hot yoga. But yeah, like it's one of those things. Once you get comfortable at being in uncomfortable situations, you thrive. You gotta learn how to thrive in that. To thrive in chaos is a great thing. You're just in that moment. Like,
You know who told me that as well? A band director told me that. I went to high school with this guy. He's a band director now. He said the same thing as you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And he was talking about it for like auditions for orchestras and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
there's a clip that's on the channel. It's literally said band director says be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mhm.
It's wild. It applies to everything.
Yeah, it applies to art, like pretty much like you said, everything. And that's why like I love, when somebody finds their art, because you start to see commonalities in the way that they think. Like, there's so many differences between a band director and, a mixed martial artist and a soccer player. But the thing is, we have our craft, the mindset that we need to have is quite similar. I'm pretty sure you heard of sports psychology. Like, that's been taken off lately too. And you see what it does for these athletes, and they learn a very similar mindset of execution, depending on where they get the information from. So it's really cool to find these commonalities, and you find it also with a lot of like books in regards to like warlords and stuff like that. Like like Napoleon, like Genghis Khan, like those individuals, like they had a lot of commonalities. But one of the main commonalities that they had was being that being uncomfortable, but then also knowledge of self. Like that was really big. Like they knew who they were and how to control themselves. And it's crazy because one of the quotes that Musashi has is, "Don't try to control others if you can't control yourself." So you start to see, like we said, like the commonality in the mind of those who excel or dare to be great. And so yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's interesting that the daring to be great part. I had a discussion on the podcast as well with a guy. He's a video game designer, but we were talking about the sort of the people who try to be great often aren't the nicest. Like you end up with like a Jordan situation where like the hyper competitiveness or they have to win at everything or the um like they will win at all costs, right? But at the expense of being nice to somebody else. And he was like, it's like basically what we were saying, we were talking about the context was like broader discussion for society. And he was like, well, when they're kids, like then they don't get socialized as well because the other kids don't like them. And I was like, yeah, that's true. But then also like, do you want to rob that kid of the chance of being like something great with the understanding that like there's only one Michael Jordan. There's only one Kobe.
Yeah.
There's only one Ronaldo. There's only one Khabib. There's only one of these people. However, all of those people have that like psyche or similar to them, and it's the same thing with Genghis Khan and Napoleon. Like all of these people anyone who's done something great has had to like be not nice at some like.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing where for me being in coaching and for I don't know what you plan on doing later, but for people that are in that like the teaching, coaching sort of realm, it's
Mhm.
like it's tough because you see a kid that's like the other kids don't like him, and then you see like there's maybe something in that kid, and like you don't as a society, I don't think we've decided. I think we've decided like no, you should be nice to everybody, and we don't want that situation to happen. And I don't really like that.
Yeah. And I agree. People put limitation on you that they put on themselves. I heard from somebody one day.
Hmm.
And to me, it's like just be you. If you're naturally a kind person, then be kind. Like if if you're yourself, you're authentic, then you're good. There's a reason why people get like kind of turned off when you're too nice, because a lot of people are nice and they expect the universe to give them something in return. But when you're just yourself and you're in your purpose, then existence is like effortless because you're doing what you pretty much want to do, and it's in a certain perspective you want to go down those lines. And yeah, I don't like it either, because not everybody deserves your niceness, not everybody deserves your kindness, and a lot of things in this world that you want, you're gonna have to take. Like I tried the nice route when it came to MMA at first. When I first got in it, like, oh, sorry, this would be good to do, and then finally I was just like, yo, you know what, like, yo, like what the fuck's going on? Like, you know what I mean? Like, y'all know I'm the best fighter fucking here, right? Like, I had to start to rattle people's, like, their souls a little bit, their egos a little bit to get what I wanted. Because if you truly want what you want in life, you just walk around just being nice, expecting things in return. Nobody's gonna give you anything. Like, nobody really, what's wrong with it for? Nobody necessarily is voluntarily going to give you everything in life. You got to go out there and get it. I mean, even if you look at like real estate, right? You have to
Hmm.
like compete with people to get that house. You're technically taking that house in a sense from another person. Yeah, it creates a community where it's like, I understand it keeps the peace, but at the same time, they're gonna run into somebody who doesn't live by that mindset, and they're gonna get like like out competed, blown through. So yeah, it's an interesting concept, and it's really interesting to see where society is going when it comes to the whole nice situation, because nice is so fake to me. You know, being kind is different. Like kind is like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have the
yeah.
genuineness of your heart. Being nice is like when I'm bad as a kid and I'm like I'm like taking the kids' lunch, but I'm like, be nice. And it's just like, okay, so there's rules, I'm gonna have to give this back. But that's not how the world works.
Yeah.
It's
One
crazy.
one thing you said that made me think of is the nice thing. It's not really about. It's like you want to encourage people to figure out who they are
Mhm,
and then be themselves authentically.
mhm,
And sometimes people are those hyper competitive individuals, and that's who they are. And there is a problem, like if that person has no talent and like they scream every time they lose a board game, like that's not healthy.
yeah.
However, that is like the self-control piece that you mentioned earlier.
Mhm,
And to I think finding yourself is is a big part of martial arts traditions in the Eastern cultures, isn't it?
yeah,
So like
absolutely.
so you finding like figuring out who you are is probably the hardest and most rewarding thing I think somebody can, or one of the hardest and one of the most rewarding things that somebody can do, because once you figure that out,
Mhm,
then the conversation we had earlier about people coming back into your life when you do something or like this or that, like it doesn't matter as much anymore because you don't need those people for like validation or anything like that. And I
mhm,
think that's what we've come to, this like cross section, this weird cross section where people tell people they can be anything they want, but that's not really true. It's to people can pursue what they want when they figure out who they are. And like that's a nuance that I think that I don't know, I'm just putting this together right now because of the
mhm.
two things you said earlier. I don't know. That's interesting. What do you think? What do you think about, what are your thoughts? Because I'm just piecing this together right now. I use these podcasts to like learn and put things together. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I live through the mindset of like once you find yourself, you will start getting rewarded in abundance by like the universe, like by God, whatever your belief system is, because you're going to be moving the way that you need to move. The trap of being nice will have people doing things for people that they shouldn't be doing for. And so, with that being said, like you're right, you know, not everybody has necessarily the talent to, you know, do everything, but if they pursue enough in a certain avenue, they might not get that, but they're gonna find their purpose in that avenue. If you gravitate towards something, gravitate towards it. Nothing's stopping you. You know, like I mean, you can have a 9 to 5 and do all that, but if you're into biking, like go bike. I mean, there's what I'm horrible at math, but you know, there's like 16 hours, you know, in a day left after work. Like go out and bike. So yeah, I agree. I agree. But it ultimately comes down to figuring out who you are. And that takes a long time for a lot of people. And also, when you do that, you find out what you're good at. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't know what they're good at. Um,
Takes time and suffering because you have to figure out the parts of you that aren't good. And then you have to face those parts of you. You have to look yourself in the mirror and be like, I don't like this part about me. And that's not
yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Honestly, that's how I found myself. It's through suffering. Like not fighting for 2 years, seeing my title shot taken, like, you know, old coaches saying I'm not good enough, people unfollowing me. You know how hard it is to like, you know how hard it is to push a brand, but and imagine you like stop making a podcast for 2 years, but you out here promoting that you got your equipment ready, you know, got
Yeah.
everything ready, and you're not doing it, you know. So yeah, it's a wild ride, but yeah, like through suffering is how I truly found out who I was, and that's when you start to be able to get validation from yourself. You stop looking from it from other people. You get it from yourself.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I feel like that's a nice way to wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
So just what's next for the people listening? What's next for you? You've got your fight in April.
Yes, sir. I got my fight in April.
That's to defend the title, yeah?
Yeah, to defend the title. And after I'm going pro, and it's gonna be full forward going pro. So we're just making sure that we tweak what we need to tweak. In the moment, just be in the lab. Be in the lab, baby. We got this.
Hell yeah. Where can the people find you on the socials?
You find me at Nas Ninja Black on Instagram. It's quite a memorable name. Trust me, you'll see me when you find me.
All right. Appreciate your time, man. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, you too, man.
All right. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.
See you.